Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning. Welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Rachel Golfeiz. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm super excited because, getting a chance to talk to you today is going to help a lot of people. And so today we're going to talk about helping aging adults cope with life changes. And so I think that, I think it's good that you're here and that we're talking about this because I think it's another one of those kind of taboo subjects, and that we got to get it out there so people really understand, and so so you're a therapist, correct?
Correct. Yes, I'm an LCSW.
And so one of the things that that we notice or have a tendency to notice is that a lot of times as you get older, depression kicks in.
Right.
And is it normal? What do you find in your practice?
Yeah. So older adults are at higher risk for depression. And so that's why we do often see that as people age. And, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. There's so much change and transition going on. And on top of that, as we age, there's a lot of loss, whether it's a loved one or even just losing your independence, losing your home, the way you lived in the past, even your car. Like I've heard so many older adults lament the fact that they don't have their car anymore. They can't just drive and go around whenever they want. So all of that, they're grieving that loss. And that often gets intertwined with depression, as we see. That's not to say that automatically as we age, we get depressed, but it is common. We do see it often.
That was probably the most painful thing for my grandfather. When he couldn't drive anymore.
Yes.
He lost his ability to walk over time, and I don't think that bothered him as much as the fact that he couldn't drive.
I know, it's so interesting. I've seen it so often where they're really just mourning that loss of driving. It's indicative, I think, of, just their aging, the aging process. They're losing their independence.
Yeah. And so I had to talk to him. I said, you are totally missing the ball here. And he's like, what? And I said, you have a chauffeur. I said, someone is going to drive you around wherever you want to go. And you're actually going to get to look out the window and see things you haven't seen in a while because you have to drive and pay attention. Yeah. I said, this is the time you really should enjoy, because now you're special. You have a chauffeur.
Right. No, that's a nice way to look at it.
And so, well, I'm a firm believer that presentation is everything. How you present something makes all the difference in the world. And, and we were blessed with an awesome caregiver. I give kudos to Phoebe every chance I get. She was phenomenal. There anything in the world today, and my grandparents have been gone for a long time, that if she calls, there's nothing I wouldn't do for her, but she was right there with me going, oh yeah, I'm happy to drive you anywhere you want to go. So we'll just throw you in the car. We'll just drive around if you want to, so.
That's incredible. It's so important to have a good caregiver.
And it helped immensely. We were blessed, finally. It took a while to get a rhythm of good daytime, good nighttime, good weekend caregivers. But once we got those in place, it was just rocking and rolling. Everything kind of worked. Mm-hmm. And so, but I find that a lot of people, as you get older, especially at that age, telling them, hey, you should get some therapy is not something they want to do. Right. And so tell our listeners why they should do it and why it's important and how it can help.
Right. So as I said before, there's so much change and transition that goes on as we age. And there is, again, loss. And so to be able to process these experiences, these emotions that we're having, these changes, perhaps gain some coping skills or to, find meaning in our life now. So often what I see is that older people, they kind of sometimes lose the meaning in their life. Like, what purpose do I have now? And so to find that again and to process all these experiences can be so helpful and also not exacerbate any symptoms they're having, be it depression or anxiety or grief.
So what is reminiscence therapy, and who is it best for?
So reminiscence therapy is great for older adults, elderly, and also those with dementia. So reminiscence therapy is we're using any of the five senses to bring to the forefront past memories. So on a basic level, that could just be conversation, just little prompts of having them then share past experiences, people, things they've been through, childhood, but also it could be objects that they have that are meaningful to them. So I could give you two quick examples of what I've experienced when seeing elderly. They were both in an assisted living. So one of them was a woman, she had dementia. And when she was, in her prime, she was this incredible English teacher. I think it might have been for high school students. And she saved her curriculum and assignments and her own writings and letters she received from students. And we would go through them and she would read them over. And in the beginning of the session, she would kind of seem down. Her spirits were down. And by the end of the session, she was so alive. She was remembering what an amazing teacher she was, that she had such a positive effect on her students, as we saw from the letters she received. And it was a different person from 45 minutes when I first walked in till the end. She was a different person. So it was really incredible to see that change. And another example is when I met with another woman in an assisted living facility. She didn't have dementia, but I think something she was struggling with was the loss of her independence and the loss of, her way of life that she was used to. So she had grown up on a ranch with several siblings, and a niece of hers, I think it was during COVID, she was looking for some sort of project to take on. She compiled all of the family recipes into a beautiful recipe book with pictures of the family as they were growing up on the ranch. And so each of the siblings contributed recipes, and we would go through that recipe book and she would reminisce about the different experiences and holidays and recipes associated with them. And it was really nice. So it really brightened her up and reminded her of her beautiful life that she lived and this legacy that she has.
And so that's always good. Good recipes are always good to have. So
Right.
definitely. So how is that different from narrative therapy?
So narrative therapy is similar in that we're prompting them to narrate their life and their experiences. But where it differs is that everyone has their own narrative of their life and their experiences, what events, what experiences they're choosing to string together to form their life narrative. And so we want to ensure that their narrative is leaving them with a positive identity. So if, for some reason they struggle with, say it's self-blame, we're going to try to prompt them to come up with a narrative with their life experiences that perhaps externalizes the problems instead of internalizing them and giving them meaning to their life that they lived.
I think change sometimes is very difficult for people, so I know for me, younger, I had a difficult time with change. It's taken me a lot of work to get to the point to where appreciating change, so, but when you think about, what you did before and now the limitations, I think that's also very painful, in that aspect of it. And so
Right.
how can therapy help someone adjust to their new living arrangements when when they go into assisted living or nursing home care?
So there is a lot of change and transition when going to a different environment. And whether it's, first of all, a big part of it, which I don't know if wouldn't necessarily come to mind, is making new friends. And that's a big deal to ensure that they're not socially isolated. And then just transitioning to a new schedule, new people, whether it's like a new medication regimen, new nurses, meal times. These are all different things that they may not be used to, on top of the fact that often when they're moving to an assisted living or a nursing home, they are losing some of their independence. And so transition, change, loss, all of these things can be difficult to experience. And so therapy can help, again, to process these changes and how it affects them emotionally and physically and socially. And to also, the therapist can provide coping skills with these new arrangements. And so it could be very helpful. And also, again, to not exacerbate any of these symptoms they're feeling as a result of this change.
What do you find, in your practice? Because you've been doing this for a while, working with, with seniors. I know that the loss of control is a big thing, and drastic change tends to be, a big thing. Do you think it's easier to make those adjustments if someone is home, or do you think it's harder if they're having to do that in a facility? What do you find in your practice that seems to make things easier? Is it the approach of how you do the transition, or is it just the individual in helping them through the process?
So again, your question was if change could happen at home versus moving to a new place, which one might be preferable, and how you go about that change?
Well, I'm really curious about, so someone can't stay home anymore. So, so they're and now they're transitioning, and you're the caregiver of the child or whatever. You're now transitioning a parent. What do you find in your practices that's something that's very helpful for, for those kids that are having to move mom or dad? Is it things you tell them? Is it how you decorate the room? What do you find that's helpful? So for our listeners listening to this, and they know they've got to transition, you're trying to make it as easy as possible. What do you tell them that makes it easier?
Right. So one thing you mentioned definitely makes it easier is bringing things that they've had from their home and setting up their room in a way that's comfortable for them, that doesn't pose any impediment to their, physical, where they're holding physically, to keep it safe, but then also to, if possible, bring in objects, pictures, anything that is meaningful to their parent, whoever they're, giving care to. That can definitely ease the transition. Something important, and if this is possible, to take a tour of the facility before moving in, so they know where things are located. They know, the basic schedule and the way things are run. Maybe they'll meet the wellness director or the administrator, so they have some familiar faces to ease the transition. And some places even allow the caregiver, the child, to sleep over the first night if possible with their parent. And so that also helps ease the transition slowly.
And so perfect. And so any last words that you think that our listeners, those words of wisdom for the years you've been doing this? Let me ask you this before we're off. I realize that I've got a parent that doesn't seem to be coping well.
Okay.
And how do I get them to therapy? How do I get them to talk to you when it's not something that they're thinking that they want to do? Any suggestions for the children so that they say, hey, I really want you to to talk to Rachel. She has lots of experience in this area, and I think she'll be helpful. Anything, words of wisdom to the kids to get them to make that call?
Yeah. So sometimes you want to remove that clinical aspect out of it and just get them to one session. And you can pose it as more of, you're just chatting. You're just having a conversation with this woman. She wants to hear about you, your experiences, your life, and to pose it in a way. And this is really what I believe. These people have lived full lives. They have so much of their own wisdom to share and experiences to share. And I'm interested in hearing about that. So, I think posing it in that way, it's not as much of that mental health stigma. We're just chatting, try to get them in for that first session, and they'll realize that, it could be a very pleasant and helpful experience and meaningful experience.
Perfect. That's awesome. And so, because I think sometimes just getting over a hurdle, and how you do that, as easy as possible is so helpful, for our listeners and for those kids that are, no mom and dad could probably stand to have someone to, to talk to. And I'm with you there. The seniors I ran across were so smart, and and just some of their life experiences are just phenomenal. And you also have to think about how much change has occurred during their lifetime.
Yes.
So, I mean, my grandkids can't imagine that I had to get up and actually turn the knob on the TV.
Right.
And our first TV was black and white, and we had 3 channels. We were so excited when we got 6.
They can't comprehend this.
Yeah, it's just, and I just find seniors are fascinating. So I appreciate the work, and I know that it's such a rewarding experience. And Rachel, tell our listeners, how do they find you so that they can get their parents to call you and get some good help from your end?
Yeah. So, they can email me at info@jerrycarebehavioralhealth.com. That's a small company I am the clinical director of. We're in several clinics where we see the elderly population for mental health services.
Perfect. I appreciate that immensely. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. And we look forward to having you on the show again.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcasts as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.